I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. Jesus had a message for the Pharisees in his generation. He said in Matthew chapter 16 and verse 3, "O ye hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times." Now, this has a tremendous message for us today. First of all, the Pharisees had decided that they didn't want to study prophecy at all. Maybe it was, gave them a headache or something. Maybe it was because there were some people who were going around in their day saying, the Messiah is coming, the Messiah is coming. And he'll be here he gave a certain date. Not wanting to be classified as a date setter, the Pharisees decided that they would just avoid the question altogether. Oh, doesn't that sound like today? Back in 1843, there were some folks who got some white robes and went out on the mountain side and waited for the Lord to come because he was coming that very day. Well, when he didn't show up, they recalculated and figured that he would come a few months later. And on that day, a few months later, they were out there ready and waiting, and he didn't come at that time either. So they recalculated again for the third time, and they finally decided he was going to come on a certain date. And they waited with their preacher, and the Lord didn't show up, and they waited another hour or two, and he didn't come, and they waited another hour or two, and he didn't come, and finally everybody fell into great remorse because they had been so wrong. And it was very embarrassing for their leader too. Well, to avoid being accused of being a date setter, a lot of ministers decide to avoid the study altogether. It is to you, Mr. Pharisee, that Jesus says, you cannot discern the signs of the times. Now, we're not supposed to be date setters, okay? And by the way, the only date setters that are really frustrating things are those who set the dates for the rapture, because that's what the white robes on the mountainside's all about, right? We're supposed to hear the trumpet and the Lord come down and snatch us out, and we're gone in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. The rapture has always been the one we're trying to set October 3rd or September 11th or May the 29th or something like that, okay? There are a lot of prophecies concerning the end time that we do need to understand. And I want to bring one in particular to your attention. That would be from Micah chapter 5, and the fact that Micah said that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. Listen to the verse. "But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting." Now, set within the context of that chapter, it's very confusing. However, when Herod wanted to find out where the Messiah would be born, he asked the temple rulers and leaders, and they told him that Micah said he would be born in Bethlehem. But now let's look at the context. Okay? We back up one chapter to chapter 4, verse 1. "But in the last days it shall come to pass." Oh. Then this Bethlehem verse here seems to be set out of the context. Why is it there when the scripture here is talking about the last days? In fact, according to the verses here, Israel is to be regathered in verse 6. "In that day saith the Lord, I will assemble her that halteth, I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted, and will make her that halted a remnant." And it says, was cast off a strong nation, and the Lord shall reign over them in Mount Zion from henceforth even forever. That's the Messianic kingdom. And then over here in verse, let's say verse 4 and following of chapter 5. That's 2 verses after he talks about Bethlehem. And he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall abide. For now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth, and this man shall be the peace when the Assyrian shall come into our land, etc., etc. In other words, we're talking Messianic kingdom, Armageddon, end time, return of the remnant. Why does Micah put Bethlehem right in the middle of this context? Well, let me tell you. This is a parenthetical portion that takes them back to the first advent of the Messiah when the kingdom didn't go so well. It was not developed. It was a time when the Messiah was rejected and nailed to a cross, and he went away promising to come back someday. Well, most people who read verse 2 about Bethlehem being the birthplace of the Messiah don't follow on to read verse 3. Listen to verse 3. Therefore will he give them up. That's exactly what Jesus did. He gave them up. The Romans came, destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and in AD 1